April 16th, 1944, 0530 hours, a waterlogged field somewhere on the south coast of England. The rain is a physical presence. It's not a drizzle. It's a cold, penetrating sheet of North Atlantic misery that has been falling for 3 days. It turns the dark clay of the training ground into a thick, boot-sucking paste. Sergeant Arthur Davies, No. 3 Commando, feels the familiar ice-cold trickle find the gap between his wool collar and his neck. He ignores it. He's been ignoring it or something like it since 1940. His world is defined by the smell of damp wool, rifle oil, and the bitter tang of stewed tea. He hunkers behind a collapsing stone wall, his gaze fixed on the gray, indistinct line of trees 300 yards distant. His hands, raw and red, are busy. He methodically works a 4x2 patch of flannelette, slick with Rangoon oil, through the bore of his rifle. It's the Lee-Enfield No. 4 MKI, a heavy, reliable piece of timber and steel. It's his lifeline. He knows its every scar, its every quirk. He knows that if he doesn't keep the mechanism free of this cursed mud, the bolt will seize. He knows the mad minute of rapid aimed fire it's capable of. He also knows it holds 10 rounds and that every single one must be deliberately, physically chambered with a forceful wrist snap. There is no room for waste. Davies himself is a picture of this philosophy. His P-37 battle dress is coarse, thick wool. It weighs a ton when dry and twice that when wet. But it's durable. It doesn't melt when hit with sparks from a fire, and it stays warmish even when soaked. Everything on him is P-37 pattern web gear, a complex, khaki-green harness of canvas straps that distribute an impossible load. On his left, ammo pouches with 50 rounds of .303 and 5-round chargers. On his right, more pouches. On his hip, a bayonet, a grim 10-inch pig sticker. Strapped to his back is the small pack. Inside, a spare pair of socks meticulously darned, his housewife sewing kit, a tin of Tommy Cooker solid fuel, his mess tin, his hold-all containing his shaving kit, a single-blade razor he's been nursing for a month, stropping it on his palm, and a sliver of hard, cold-water soap. His luxury is a half-empty packet of Woodbine cigarettes tucked in a waterproof oilskin pouch. He's rationing them, one after breakfast, one after the midday meal, one before he tries to sleep. For food, he has a tin of bully beef and a half-dozen hardtack biscuits. They are functional. They are calories. They are not food. This is the British soldier's reality. His equipment is rugged, functional, and utterly without comfort. It is the product of a nation that has been at war for 5 years. A nation hanging on. A nation where every scrap of steel, every yard of canvas, is precious. His most prized possession, hanging from his belt, is his Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife. It is a tool of brutal, specialized purpose. It is not a can opener. It is not a utility blade. It is for killing. It is, like Davies, stripped of all non-essentials. A sound cuts through the hiss of the rain. A low, unfamiliar rumble, deeper than their own Bedford lorries. Davies's Corporal Taffy Evans nudges him, spitting a stream of brown tobacco juice. "They're here, Sarge." Davies finishes his task. He snaps the bolt home, the clack-clack, a sharp, reassuring sound. He peers over the wall. Through the mist, a new column of vehicles is grinding its way into the neighboring field. They aren't the familiar, boxy British Bedfords. These are bigger, sleeker, and there are so many of them. GMC deuce and a halves, their canvas tops a darker, cleaner shade of olive drab. And behind them, smaller, beetle-like vehicles he's only seen in newsreels. Jeeps. They splash through the mud with an arrogant, effortless energy. The trucks stop. The tailgates drop. And the men who jump out, they don't look like any soldiers Davies has ever seen. The men emerging from the American trucks are a different breed. Sergeant Davies and his squad watch, their soaked woolen forms blending into the gray English landscape. The Americans seem to exist in a different color palette. Their M1941 field jackets are a lighter, cleaner olive drab. Their helmets, the distinctive M1 steel pot, are a different shape, but it's not the uniforms that draw the eye. It's the way they wear them. The first man to jump down, a private first class from the 29th Infantry Division, doesn't seem bothered by the rain. He lands lightly in the muck, his boots a new design Davies doesn't recognize. High-laced leather with a separate-looking sole, barely sinking in. This American, he's clean. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out a small, brightly colored cardboard packet. With a flick of his thumb, a small flame appears. A metal lighter. Davies's men share a book of damp, near-useless matches. The American lights a cigarette, pristine, white, and perfectly round, drawn from a crisp green and gold pack. He takes a long, casual drag and offers the pack to his buddy. "Rain something else over here, huh?" the GI says, his voice carrying clearly across the field. Davies and his men just stare. It's not the casualness that shocks them. It's the abundance. A whole pack, offered, like it's nothing. Then the gear starts coming off the trucks. It's not just rifles. It's everything. The Americans unload wooden crates with a kind of rhythmic efficiency, stacking them high. Davies sees one crate split open. It's not ammunition. It's food. Tins. But not the plain, paper-labeled bully beef. These are bright with pictures. Cans of peaches. Tins of processed ham. An American non-com, a buck sergeant with 3 stripes, barks an order. "All right, clear this gear. Jackson, get the K-Rations over by the CP tent and don't drop the goddamn coffee." Coffee. Real coffee, Davies thinks, not the acrid. Burnt barley char his men boil in a blackened kettle. But the real revelation is the weaponry. A young American private, a kid who looks barely 18, hefts his personal weapon. It's not a bolt-action rifle. It's the M1 Garand. Davies has heard of them, but seeing one is different. The GI slings it onto his shoulder. It's shorter, more compact than the Enfield. And Davies knows the rumors. It holds 8 rounds and an en-bloc clip, and it fires as fast as you can pull the trigger. That distinctive ping of the ejecting clip is a sound they will soon come to know well. Another soldier carries a Thompson M1A1 submachine gun. Davies' section has one Sten gun. A crude skeletal tube of welded steel that costs less than $10 to make and is prone to jamming if you look at it wrong. This Thompson is a beautifully machined, heavy piece of hardware, exuding blunt industrial power. The Americans don't just have more gear. They have better gear, and it's not just the guns. A GI walks past their wall, hauling a large canvas roll. He nods a howdy to the silent, watching Commandos. Strapped to his M1928 haversack is a compact folding shovel, an entrenching tool. Davies' men carry the P-37 entrenching tool, a heavy, separate spade head and a wooden pick helve that must be assembled. This American's tool is a single, clever, articulated piece of steel. Even their personal items are an affront. The GI stops, pulls a small dark brown bar from his pocket, tears the wrapper and takes a bite. A chocolate bar. Not the gritty, vitamin-laced ration bar brick the British get, but actual sweet, energy-rich chocolate. "Blimey," mutters Corporal Evans, his voice low. "Look at 'em. They look like they're off on a bleedin' holiday." Davies says nothing. He watches a young lieutenant, and consulting a map. The American officer has a .45 pistol on his hip, a carbine slung over his other shoulder, and a canteen. He then reaches into his pocket and pulls out a pair of dark sunglasses, in the middle of a rainstorm. In England, Davies isn't jealous. He's shocked. This isn't an army. It's a machine. A vast, wealthy, unstoppable machine, flowing out of the guts of those endless gray cargo ships in Southampton. These men, they haven't been rationing for 5 years. They haven't been making do. They are the products of a country that can make 1,000,000 of everything. He looks back at his own Lee-Enfield, at its oiled wood and worn bluing. It's a soldier's weapon. He looks at the Americans. They are a nation's weapon, and the difference is terrifying. Later that day, the rain finally eases, replaced by a damp, penetrating chill. The joint training exercise is set for 04 hours tomorrow. A briefing is called in a large, hastily erected American tent. Sergeant Davies files in with his section, his hobnailed boots scraping on the duckboards laid over the mud. The tent is a marvel. It's vast, dry, and incredibly warm. A portable American potbelly stove chugs away in the corner, radiating a heat that makes Davies' damp wool uniform steam. But the most astonishing thing is the light. Strung from the canvas ceiling are electric bulbs, casting a harsh, brilliant white glare. They're powered by a small puttering generator somewhere outside. Davies' men are used to planning by the flickering, smoky light of a single kerosene hurricane lamp. The Americans are already there, clustered around a map board, smoking and talking in loud, confident voices. The air is thick with a new, sweet-smelling tobacco. It's not the sharp, vinegary scent of woodbines. It's the rich, toasted aroma of Lucky Strikes and Camels. A young American captain, impossibly handsome with a sharp jaw and a perfect crease in his trousers, addresses the mixed group. "All right, listen up. The objective is Farm Complex Charlie, here at Grid. Davies tries to focus, but his attention is drawn to the men themselves. The GIs are fidgeting. One pulls out a small metal clicker shaped like a cricket. Click-clack, he does it again. A signal device. Simple. Mass-produced. Another is cleaning his fingernails with the tip of an enormous folding Bowie knife that looks more like a prop than a weapon. After the briefing, a truck appears and the Americans line up. It's chow time, Corporal Evans nudges Davies. Sarge, you gotta see this. The British Commandos, used to their men's mess tin rectangular, line up with the Americans out of curiosity. A GI cook wearing a white apron over his fatigues slams a ladle of steaming beef stew into their trays. But it's not just stew. There are canned peaches, slices of white bread, not the dense gray national loaf and slathered with real butter. And at the end of the line, a man hands each soldier two things: a fresh, foil-wrapped bar of Hershey's chocolate and a small, 4-cigarette sample pack of Chesterfields. Davies holds the chocolate in his hand. It's heavy, solid. He hasn't seen this much chocolate in one place since before the Blitz. He watches a young American private unwrap his, take one bite and then, incomprehensibly, toss the rest into the mud. Too sweet, the GI complains. Gives me gas. Davies' men freeze. They stare at the discarded mud-covered chocolate bar as if it were a live grenade. One of his privates, a young lad from Bethnal Green, makes an involuntary half-step towards it before Davies puts a hand on his chest. The shock is palpable. It's not just wealth. It's waste. It's an attitude born of a place where things are not precious. Later, as darkness falls, Davies observes an American private shaving. The GI has a small portable mirror hung on a tent pole. He lathers his face with thick white cream from a pressurized can. Aerosol. Then he uses a shiny, new-looking Gillette razor. After a few scrapes, he meticulously rinses the blade. Davies, who has been nursing the same razor blade for 6 weeks, watches. The American finishes, dries his face on a clean towel, and then, to Davies's utter disbelief, he unscrews the razor, throws the used blade into the dirt, and slots a fresh one in from a small dispenser. He threw it away. A blade, a piece of fine, sharpened steel, discarded. Like a used match. Sergeant Davies walks away from the light of the American camp, back towards the cold darkness where his own men are huddled. He feels a profound sense of dislocation. He'd always believed he was fighting in a war of survival. He's just realized the Americans are fighting a war of production, and he's not sure which is more frightening. A few days later, the joint exercises are complete. The Americans are moving out, heading to their own sealed marshalling area. The fields are a ruin, churned into a brown-black sea of mud, littered with brass casings, empty ration tins, and discarded cigarette packets. Sergeant Davies stands with his platoon waiting for their own orders. The air is cold, but the rain has stopped. He's performing his ritual, cleaning the Enfield. He pulls the flannelette through the bore. Scrape, squeak, scrape, squeak. The rhythm is comforting, a piece of familiar analog reality in a world that has suddenly tilted. A jeep pulls up, splashing mud onto his carefully cleaned boots. The young American lieutenant from the briefing, the one with the sunglasses, hops out. "Sergeant," he says, with that easy, almost too familiar American confidence. "Sir," Davies replies, his voice flat, not rising to attention. "Commando protocol is different, and this isn't his officer." "My guys, well, they said you and your boys were pretty squared away. Like that knife work you were showing them." The lieutenant reaches into a crate on the back of the jeep. "Anyway, divisional supply dropped a surplus. Thought you might make use of these." He pulls out 2 wooden ammunition crates, but they don't contain ammo. He levers one open with a K-bar knife. Inside are cartons upon cartons of Lucky Strike cigarettes. And beneath those, dozens and dozens of foil-wrapped Hershey's bars. And here, the lieutenant says, tossing something small and heavy. Davies catches it by instinct. It's a Zippo lighter. Brushed steel, solid, it feels heavy, immortal. "Filled her up for you," the American smiles. "See you in Normandy." He gets back in the jeep, gives a casual 2-finger wave and guns the engine, spraying Davies with a fresh fan of mud as he speeds away. Davies stands alone in the field, the heavy lighter in one hand, staring at a crate of what must be 5,000 cigarettes. A surplus. Corporal Evans and the rest of the section approach, their eyes wide. "Sarge?" Evans asks, his voice barely a whisper. "Is that?" Davies doesn't answer. He just flicks the small metal wheel on the lighter. A perfect, strong, wind-proof flame appears with a solid clink. It doesn't sputter. It doesn't need to be coaxed. It just works. He looks at the lighter. He looks at the crate of cigarettes. He looks at the muddy tracks of the Jeep already disappearing. He thinks of his own kit, his single-blade razor, his damp woodbines, his darn socks. His whole world has been defined by thrift, endurance, and making do. He has been trained to be a scalpel, a sharp, precise, and precious tool to be wielded with care. He realizes in that cold, muddy field that he is now allied with a sledgehammer. An industrial, mass-produced, disposable sledgehammer that is preparing to shatter a continent. The Americans weren't just better supplied. They were differently supplied. They were fighting a different war. A war of overwhelming, inexhaustible plenty. Davies snaps the Zippo shut. The sound is final. He knows with a certainty that chills him more than the rain that they are going to win. And he knows it has almost nothing to do with men like him, and everything to do with the country that can afford to throw chocolate bars and razor blades into the mud. 40 hours. The field is swallowed by a pre-dawn blackness so total it feels solid. Sergeant Davies and his men are moving. They are ghosts, shadows detached from the earth. They move in the commando way. Heel toe, gliding through the wet grass, their woolen battle dress making almost no sound. Their P-37 webbing is strapped tight. Nothing jingles, nothing clacks. Every man is acutely aware of the single steam gun in the section. Its bolt is forward on an empty chamber. To load it is a deliberate, loud click-clack commitment, for now it is silent. Their primary tool is the FS knife and the wire garrote. The objective is the farmhouse 400 yards away, held by enemy, other British troops from a different regiment. The Americans are supposed to be supporting from the right flank, creating a diversion. At 04:15, the diversion begins. It is not a diversion. It is an eruption. A single ear-splitting brrrr rips the night apart. It's a .50 caliber machine gun mounted on one of the Jeeps, and it's firing tracer rounds that look like angry red comets tearing holes in the farmhouse silhouette. Jesus. Mary and Joseph, Corporal Evans breathes, flinching. The sheer concussive violence of the sound is stunning. Then the American rifle line opens up. It is not the sound Davies knows. It is not the steady, spaced, and individually aimed crack of a platoon of Lee-Enfields. This is a rolling semi-automatic thwack, 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 ping. It's the M1 Garands. Dozens of them. They are not firing at individual targets. They are firing at the building. They are suppressing the idea of an enemy. The sound is continuous, a hellish, overwhelming roar of gunfire, punctuated every few seconds by that high-pitched metallic ping as an empty clip is ejected, immediately followed by the clack of a new one being rammed home. They're not even aiming. A young private whispers, aghast. They don't have to. Davies mutters, his eyes wide. An American squad, dark shapes against the muzzle flashes, begins to advance. They are not crawling. They are walking. It's marching fire. One soldier is carrying a Browning automatic rifle, a bar, and firing it from the hip, a heavy, pounding thump, thump, thump that chews up the earth in front of him. The volume of lead the Americans are putting into the air is something Davies has only associated with heavy machine gun emplacements, and they are doing it with their standard infantry rifles. The battle is over in 10 minutes. The farmhouse is, hypothetically, a splintered wreck. The umpires call the exercise to a halt. As the fake dawn breaks, Davies' section moves to rendezvous. They pass the American firing line. The ground is an ocean of brass. Thousands of 30-06 casings lie glittering in the mud. Davies' men, by ingrained habit, almost stoop to pick them up. Brass is precious. It is reloaded. The GIs are already lighting up, laughing, slapping each other on the back. A sergeant is handing out K-Rations. He tosses one to Davies. Davies examines the box. It's waxed, waterproof cardboard. Breakfast unit. Inside he finds a small tin of processed eggs and ham, 4 dog biscuit crackers, a compressed fruit bar, a packet of soluble coffee powder, 4 sugar cubes, a stick of chewing gum, and a 4-pack of Camel cigarettes. This is one meal. For one man. His own men are brewing tea in their blackened mess tins, sharing a single tin of bully beef. He looks at the sheer, casual expenditure, the fuel for the jeeps, the 10,000 rounds of ammunition for a simple training exercise, the disposable food packaging, the cigarettes, the chocolate. He thinks of his Lee-Enfield. 10 rounds, He was trained to make everyone count. He was trained to recover his brass, to maintain his kit as if it were the last one he would ever be issued. He watches the Americans. They are not making do. They are not getting by. They are a tidal wave of stuff. They are an army that has solved the problem of war not with tactics, not with grit, but with an endless, terrifying, bottomless supply chain. They will not win by outthinking the enemy. They will win by burying him.